Any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our seagrass team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Johnsey, and this is Allison Patronella.
Hello.
And we study seagrass. We've been working here at Florida Fish and Wildlife for about 4 years now, and we've had the great experience of traveling around the state to study different seagrass beds. So seagrasses are a plant that is found in saltwater. They come from a land plant that millions of years ago moved from the land to the sea. Seagrasses grow in large beds that can be found on the seafloor, and these large beds form important habitats for many different types of sea life. Seagrasses are very similar to the land plants you may see when you go to the park or in your garden. They have roots and leaves and even flowers and seeds. As we can see here in this diagram, seagrasses have roots, which they use to help hold them into the sediment. They have a rhizome, which they use to store the nutrients they need to grow, a shoot that helps support them as they grow upward, and blades that help capture light for photosynthesis. There are 2 ways that a seagrass can grow a new plant. The first way is directly from the rhizome. This creates a new seagrass plant that's very close by the original plant. Seagrasses can also grow a new plant through the process of pollination. Remember I said that seagrasses have flowers? They can actually have 2 types of flowers. They have both a male flower or a female flower. The male flower can pollinate the female flowers, and then the female flower grows a fruit. This fruit detaches and floats away until it eventually settles in sediment that's further away from the original plant to grow a new plant in a new seagrass bed. So next time you're out snorkeling, see if you can spot any flowers. These features are what makes seagrasses different from seaweed. Seaweed is a type of algae, and it doesn't have roots or leaves. Seaweed can attach to rocks, or it can float freely through the sea, whereas seagrass uses their roots to anchor into the sediment. Seaweed can be found in a lot of our foods, but not seagrass. Seagrass is food for sea turtles and manatees, but not us humans.
So in Tampa Bay, we have 4 main different types of seagrass. This is turtle grass, manatee grass, shoal grass, and stargrass. So turtle grass is the largest species of seagrass that we have, and it is also one of the most common. You can see it just about anywhere in Tampa Bay. It has wide, flat blades that can grow to be fairly long, and as its name implies, it is a major dietary source for the green sea turtle. Manatee grass is the next largest. It has long, thin, cylindrical blades that when you rub them together almost feel like spaghetti between your fingers. This grass contains small amounts of sugar in its blades, which actually makes it a favorite snack for the Florida manatee. Again, hence the name manatee grass. Grass is a much smaller species of seagrass that is generally found in very shallow coastal areas. It is flat, thin blades, and it doesn't grow to be very tall, usually around a few inches. And our last seagrass type is actually our rarest, and it's called stargrass. Stargrass has short, pointed blades that point out in a radial pattern that when you look at stargrass from above, it resembles stars.
So we study these different types of seagrasses because they're very important plants. Seagrasses form important ocean ecosystems. They are habitats to many different types of animals by providing both a food source and shelter. One of my favorite animals that you can find in a seagrass bed is actually a seahorse. Seahorses love to hide in between the seagrass blades, and sometimes they'll even take their tail and wrap it around the seagrass blade and pretend to be a seagrass themselves. So many small animals, such as the seahorse and starfish, love to hide in seagrass blades. They do this because it gives them protection from larger predators. Other animals, such as manatees and sea turtles, eat the seagrass as an important part of their diet. Manatees can even eat up to 200 pounds of seagrass a day. Seagrasses are also an important nursery ground. Many fish lay their eggs in seagrass beds, and juvenile fish live to hide in the seagrass beds away from predators until they become large enough to venture out on their own. There are also other benefits to seagrasses. Through photosynthesis, seagrasses remove carbon dioxide from the water and produce oxygen. This makes seagrasses a very important carbon sink. Through photosynthesis, seagrasses also remove excess nutrients, which removes pollutants from the waters and helps clean our waters. Remember how I said seagrasses have roots? They use those roots to hold sediment on the seafloor in place. This calms waves and settles sediment and actually protects our shorelines from storms and hurricanes. Seagrasses are also really important for recreation. They are a great place for snorkeling, fishing, and scalloping.
So, in our lab, we travel across the state of Florida to visit seagrass beds and collect data about seagrass health and environmental factors. Now, this slide shows some pictures of how we study seagrasses in the field. So, if you look at the two pictures on the left, you'll see these white squares that we call quads. And what we'll do is we'll put these quads on the seafloor and then count the amount of seagrass inside of this quad so that we get an understanding of the seagrass density of the area. In the center picture is my esteemed co-host Liz taking depth and Secchi measurements, as well as working the sonde. So the sonde is a device that has very sensitive chemical sensors on the top of it. And so these sensors can pick up pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, salinity, conductivity. So what we'll do is we'll place the sonde in the water, and it records all of this data for us that we can take back to the lab. In the right two pictures, you'll see my boss building a seagrass exclusion cage so that we can study seagrass in that specific area over a large period of time, as well as a sonde that we've actually placed on blocks and left in the water over about a 2-week-long period to collect chemical data over that extensive period of time. So when we're out in the field, we'll also collect seagrass samples to bring back into the lab to study further. If you look at the picture on the right, you'll see a seagrass plant with 2 fruits on it. We can actually dissect these fruits to determine the reproductive potential of that seagrass plant. In the center are several different seagrass plants from the same area. Now what we can do with these plants is we can count the number of blades, how long the blades are, see if there are any diseases on the plants, see what epiphytes are growing on the plants. And we can even save the blade tissue and run isotopic analysis on it at a later date. The last picture on the right shows a clean short shoot. If you look closely at the short shoot, you can see little lines running horizontally across it. We can actually use these lines to date a seagrass and tell you how old it is, similar to counting rings on a tree. And even more interesting, if you look at where the red pushpin is, there was a female flower at that location at some point during the seagrass's life cycle. So we can count the rings to see out what age the seagrass flowered, and we can even determine from the scar that it was a female flower.
So another way we can study seagrasses is through aerial imagery. Aerial imagery are photos that are taken from a plane. They show us what seagrass looks like from above. When we're out on the boat, we can only see a small section of the seagrass bed at a time, but through aerial imagery, we can see the entire bed all at once. We have aerial imagery that dates all the way back to the 1940s, and we can compare this imagery to imagery from the present. And this shows us how seagrass has changed over time. So here we have some examples of aerial imagery from Pensacola Bay, which is an estuary in the Florida Panhandle. In our 2 1946 images, we can see that there was seagrass off the coast of Pensacola Bay. But by 2015, there's no sign of seagrass. This allows for us to time travel and see where seagrass was in the past and compare it to the present. We can also use this to calculate exactly how much seagrass has changed over time. We do this through programs called GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. These allow for us to create maps from the aerial imagery. Here we have a map of of Pensacola Bay, the same estuary I showed you in the last slide. And this is showing the loss of seagrass between 1950 and 1960, where the red, yellow, and orange shows a loss of seagrass, and the greens show a new growth of seagrass. Using this, we can pinpoint that exact time frame for when the seagrass was lost, and it allows us to go back and see what factors may have caused the loss of seagrass at that time.
So one of the main causes of seagrass die-offs is actually water quality. Now, as we said before, seagrasses are photosynthetic, meaning they need lots of sunlight and able to grow and stay healthy. However, objects such as tannins, turbidity, and algae in the water column can reduce seagrass growth. So tannins are a chemical that produce a brown color in the water, usually from decaying organic material, and this will come out of riverbeds and streams, usually into the ocean. And they'll make the water much darker than it normally should be. Turbidity is the amount of suspended sediment or mud in the water column, and these particles make the water very cloudy and again block sunlight transferring through it. Algae are small photosynthetic organisms that float in the water column, and when you get a large algal bloom, the whole water can turn green and very murky, and once again causes the sunlight to die off and the seagrasses to not grow. And the worst case scenario is when you have all three of these at once, to have a mixed water column that is, quite frankly, not fun to swim in and not fun for seagrasses to live in.
So many seagrass ecosystems are being lost due to human activities. These loss of ecosystems also means a loss of the animals that call seagrasses their homes. One of the main factors that is causing the loss of seagrasses is pollution. Pollution, such as agricultural runoff or the dumping of wastewater, introduces excess nutrients. Though seagrass can use some of these nutrients to grow, they can't use them all. The excess nutrients left over cause algal blooms, and as you can see from our algal bloom samples and the pictures here, the algal blooms make it difficult for the light to reach the seafloor. With no light, the seagrasses aren't able to photosynthesize. Looking at the pictures here, would you want to swim in this green, slimy water? Because neither does seagrass. Another factor that has a negative impact on seagrasses is boat propeller scarring. When a boat travels fast in shallow water and its propeller drags, this dragging can rip up seagrass and leave behind a bare scar. Many seagrass beds have many scars, and we can even see these scars and count them in aerial imagery.
So now that we know a few problems that seagrasses face, what can we do to help the seagrasses? Well, we can help by trying to lessen pollution and by practicing safe boating practices. So to lessen pollution, you can be sparing with the amount of fertilizers and pesticides you and your family use on your lawn and garden. This will lessen the amount of excess nutrients that are washed from your yard into the ocean when it rains. Lessening the amount of nutrients from runoff will help improve water quality. You can also practice safe boating practices. Whenever you're in shallow seagrass beds, make sure to raise your engine and move slowly until you're in deeper water. This will protect the seagrass from these ugly boat scars. So the good news is, if we properly take care of the environment, the seagrass ecosystem can and will thrive. With proper water quality and limited human interference, seagrass beds can grow back to their former glory. Even in Tampa Bay is an example. A couple of decades ago, we lost a large amount of seagrass. However, through major conservation efforts, Tampa Bay has grown back the majority of its lost seagrass into its current glory. So together, we can all protect seagrass habitats and make the ocean a better place. And so with that, I believe we will open up to questions.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And yeah, like Liz said, we are now going to enter into the Q&A portion here. And it looks like we have a question here from Jessica, who asked, I really want to be a scientist. How would you recommend getting into biology or science as a career?
I'm not really in it.
Well, the first thing is keep up your grades in science, and all of your other grades as well. And just science is all around you, so keep your eyes open. You're constantly going to be learning different science things, and that's about it.
Excellent. All right. And looks like we have a question here from Jared, who asked, have you ever found anything weird or anything unexpected when you were in the field?
Well, some of the weirdest stuff we can find is actually the trash that we'll pass when we're boating. One time, a couple of our crewmates found an extremely large plastic weight that they used to keep cables down on the bottom. And this was just free floating while we were out in a seagrass bed doing sampling. So of course we collected it and took it back to the dock so we could dispose of it properly. But at the time we had no idea what this giant circular tube was that was just floating in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, that's a weird one. All right, let's see. Looks like we have another question here from Michael, who is asking, let's see. Oh, he asked, what are some animals that camouflage in the seagrass beds other than seahorses?
There are a lot of them. There's a lot of different types of fish.
Horseshoe crabs will actually crawl underneath all of the roots and rhizomes, and they'll just be completely underneath the seagrass bed and you can't see it at all. There's lots of fish, stingrays, hermit crabs are everywhere in seagrass beds if you look hard enough. Just about everything in there uses the seagrass blades to hide.
Excellent. All right here. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions coming through right now. Well, we'd like to give a big thanks to our Seagrass team here for joining us today. Thanks. Bye.